Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. You're watching another episode of the Game in a Nutshell series designed for explaining the board game rules. My name is Branislav Berec and in this video we're going to learn how to play Star Wars, the deck building game from Fantasy Flight Games. It's a competitive card game for 2 players, and you may notice that I have the Czech version of the game here, localized version, but for the rules explanation this doesn't make any difference because there is no in-game text needed to explain the rules. So let's get started. To set the game up, first choose the factions. One player will play for the Empire, the other one for the Rebels. Then from the bases, choose these exact 5 bases for the Empire and these exact 5 for the Rebels, because you will only use these bases in the base game. Later, when you decide to play the advanced version of the game, you can use all 10 bases for both sides. Then from all other cards, locate these Empire starter cards and the Rebel starter cards. They are identified by this symbol, by this text at the bottom of the card. From those bases, locate the one which you are supposed to start the game with. You can keep all the remaining bases nearby, or if you want, you can place them under your starting base. Their order doesn't matter. Shuffle your starting deck of cards and then place it face down next to your base and leave some space for the discard pile. From the remaining galaxy cards, sort out these Outer Rim pilot cards and set the deck aside. Then shuffle all the galaxy cards and create the face down galaxy deck. And draw the first 6 cards face up and place them in a so-called galaxy row. And orient these red cards, rebel cards, to face the rebel player. Similarly, the cards with the blue background are Empire cards and orient them to face the Empire player. All other cards are neutral cards, place them sideways so that both players can easily read them. These Outer Rim pilot cards should be at the end of the galaxy row, and next to them place this Balance of the Force track, and again place it in such a way that the Rebel symbol faces the Rebel player and the Empire symbol faces the Empire player. Place this Force marker on the very last space of this Balance of the Force track on the Rebel side of the track. Then both players draw first 5 cards of their deck. You obviously keep your cards hidden from the other player, and that's the end of the setup. Star Wars, the deck building game, is a competitive game for 2 players, which represents the fights of the Galactic Empire against the Rebels Alliance. And both players start the game with their starting deck of cards, which they would improve over the course of the game by buying the cards from the galaxy row. And the goal of the game is to destroy 3 opponents' bases, 4 in the advanced game. Players alternate taking turns, starting with the player playing for the Galactic Empire. And in order to fully explain the player's turn, let's move a couple of turns into the game. So, first of all, at the start of your turn, if you lost your base in your previous turn, then the very first thing you have to do on your turn is to choose a new base. You can choose any base from your remaining bases and put the chosen base into play as your new base. Again, keep your remaining bases nearby. Then if the Force marker is in this very last space on your side, you get 1 resource. Resources are represented by these yellow cubes, so you would get 1 yellow cube. Then if you have any capital ship in play, your own one or neutral ship, and that capital ship would have this kind of symbol, that symbol represents resources, so you get these resources now at the start of the turn. Here it's 2 resources. You get those resources even if the capital ship is damaged, that is marked with these purple markers. Then you can actually take your turn. On your turn, you will perform following actions, and you may perform any number of times in any combination, in any order. You can play a card, you can buy the card from this galaxy row, you can use cards' abilities, you can commit your forces to attack the enemy base, you can also attack cards in the galaxy row, and then you can resolve these attacks. And you can continue taking actions until you are no longer able or willing to take any other action. Now I'm going to cover all the actions in detail. The first action is to play a card. Choose any card from your hand and place it face up somewhere into your play area. Such card is now considered to be in play. If there is a resource symbol in the top left hand corner of the card, which is this symbol, immediately collect that number of resources. So here we have another 2 resources. If you play a card with this symbol, it allows you to move the force marker that many spaces to your side. So in this case, move the marker 2 spaces to your side of the balance of the force track. If the force marker is already on the last space on your side of the track and you can move it further, the remaining movement points are forfeited. Just for the record, when playing this card, you would also gain 2 additional resources. Once the card is in play, you can use its abilities, you can commit it to an attack. I'm going to talk about these in just a minute. The second type of action is to purchase a card from the Galaxy row. The Rebel player can only buy the Rebel cards and neutral cards, including the Outer Rim pilots, but cannot purchase any Empire cards. Similarly, the Empire player can purchase the Empire cards and the neutral cards cannot purchase any Rebel cards. To purchase a card, you have to spend number of resources printed in the top left hand corner of the card. In this case, it's 4 resources. You have to take those resources from your current resource pool and return them back to the general supply. And then remove the chosen card from the Galaxy row and place it face up in your discard pile. Then immediately refill the Galaxy row, flip the top card of the deck face up and place it in a row, position it based on its type. Since this is a neutral card, it is placed sideways to both players. The next type of action is to use the card ability. All the card's abilities are optional, you don't have to use them. But when you decide to resolve the ability, you must perform as much of the effect as possible. You can only ignore anything that cannot be performed. You can only use the ability of each card in play once per turn. To indicate that you have used the ability of the card this turn, tilt the card slightly and then carry out the effect. Here we would take another resource, for example. Similarly, if you decide to use the ability on this card, again, tilt it slightly to indicate that you have used the ability. And if you use the ability on the card which can also be used for an attack, you can still use it later for that attack. If the card contains a symbol like this, it represents the attack strength. With this card you can deal 3 damage, with this one 2 damage. You can also deal 2 damage with this card. So you can commit these cards to an attack. You can attack enemy base, or you can use your units to attack the cards in the Galaxy row. And you can only attack the opponent's cards in the Galaxy row. If the Rebel player attacks the Galaxy row, it's called a Sabotage. If it's performed by the Empire player, it's called Bounty Hunting. I'm going to explain attacking the base first, and then later attacking the Galaxy row. If you decide to attack the base, take all the cards you want to use for the attack, even if the card's ability has been used already this turn. Then use some suitable way to indicate that you use these cards to attack the base. You can, for example, place them next to the base, but you can use any other way to indicate this. And if you use a card which is tilted, which means you have used its ability already, keep that card tilted. This step is called committing to an attack because you can use multiple cards, and once you are done with committing the cards, you can then resolve the attack. To resolve the attack, total the attack values of all the cards you have committed. And by the way, when you attack the base, you can also use capital ships if that ship has this attack value. So you would add this attack value to your total. And this total attack value here we have 3, 2 and 2, that's 7. That's the total damage you deal with this attack. You can take the corresponding number of these damage markers. Each purple marker represents 1 damage you dealt. And you have to apply the damage in the following way. If the defender has any capital ships, you must first destroy these ships. Each capital ship has a number in the bottom left, those are hit points. If you deal the damage equal to the hit points of the capital ship is destroyed. Remove the damage counters and place the destroyed capital ship to the discard pile of its owner. And the remaining damage is then dealt to the opponent's base. These damage markers remain on the opponent's base until they are repaired by some card ability or until the base is destroyed. Similarly to capital ships, if the number of these damage markers is equal to the base hit points value, the base is destroyed. Again, return the damage markers back to the general supply and place the destroyed base face down at your end of the balance of the force track. If you still have any unapplied damage, but the opponent doesn't have any bases or capital ships, this remaining damage is lost. If the defender has more than one capital ship, you can apply that damage to these ships any way you want. You can, for example, use 5 damage markers to destroy this big capital ship. The other ship would receive 2 damage but would not be destroyed. And that means there is no damage dealt to the base. Again, the destroyed ship is placed in its owner's discard pile, and similar to card's abilities, which can only be used once per turn, you can also commit the cards to an attack only once per turn. That's why you need to indicate the commitment to an attack, because once you use the cards for an attack, you may not use them again for another attack this turn. However, even after the attack, you may still use the ability on the card if you haven't done so already. Instead of attacking the opponent's base, you may attack opponent's cards in the galaxy row. You cannot attack the neutral cards, only the opponent's cards. All the cards you can attack have this target value printed upside down so that you can see it from your side of the table. And the card also contains the reward you gain when you defeat the card, when you remove that card from the galaxy row. When you commit to an attack on the card in the galaxy row, place all your attacking units under the card. And let me emphasize here that you can only use your units to attack the cards in the galaxy row. You may not use capital ships. Then again, to resolve the attack, total the attack value on the cards. And if this total is equal or higher than the target value, you defeat the card. You may then gain the reward from the card, which means you don't have to, but probably you want to. Then remove the card from the galaxy row and place it in a galaxy discard pile, which can be placed somewhere next to the galaxy draw deck. Those units you have committed to an attack will remain in their position to indicate that these units may not be used for another attack this turn. And unlike attacking the opponent's base, if you attack the cards in the galaxy row and you don't defeat these cards, there are no damage markers placed on these cards. You either defeat them or not. If you defeat the card and you still have any unapplied damage, that damage is lost. When you're done with all the actions you were able or you wanted to do, your turn ends and do the following. First, discard all your units in play face up into your discard pile. If you use the ability on your capital ships or your base, return them back to the horizontal position. If you still have any cards in your hand, which is unlikely, but if you do, place those cards in your discard pile as well. And then draw the new 5 cards from your draw deck. If you don't have enough cards in your draw deck, draw as many cards as you can, then reshuffle your discard pile and create a new draw deck. And from this new draw deck, draw the remaining cards. In this example, it would be 3 cards, and add them to your hand. That's the end of your turn, and then it's the next player's turn. Players alternate taking turns until one player destroys the last opponent's base. For example, here the attack value is 5, which is fully sufficient to deal 16th damage to this base. That means this base is destroyed, and if it's the last opponent's base, you immediately win the game. In the base game, you need to destroy 3 opponents' bases. The advanced game is slightly longer. To win the game, you need to destroy 4 opponents' bases. At the end of the rulebook, you can find a section which explains important keywords. I'm only going to explain few of them. If the card ability uses a phrase, "if the force is with you," then you may only use that ability on the card. If the force marker is in one of these 3 spaces, so on your side of this balance of the force track. If the force marker would be placed here, for example, then the rebel player would not be able to use the card ability. If the force marker would be in the middle, it is not with any of the players. Then if you have to discard the card from your hand, you discard it to your discard pile. If during your turn your opponent has to discard a card, they discard it to their discard pile. If you have to discard the card from the Galaxy row, it is discarded to the Galaxy discard pile. And by the way, if this Galaxy deck ever runs out, reshuffle the discard pile and create a new draw pile. And obviously, after removing the card from the Galaxy row, immediately replace it with a new one. When repairing the damage, return the damage cubes back to the general supply. Then if you can exile the card is completely removed from the game. And if you can destroy a capital ship, if you destroy the capital ship of your opponent, it is discarded back to their discard pile. If you destroy a ship from the Galaxy row, it is discarded to the Galaxy discard pile and obviously immediately replaced with another card. So that's how you play Star Wars the deck building game. At the back of the rulebook you will find some small variations of the game, including 2 versus 2 players mode. If you have any questions or comments, I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. If you like the series, please subscribe. You can support the channel on the Patreon page. You've been watching Game in a Nutshell. My name is Branislav Berec and hope to see you next time. I would like to thank everyone who has ever supported the channel, and especially the current supporters listed on this page. If you too would like to support the channel in creation of videos like this and other video tutorials and other content on this channel, please visit the patreon.com/Nithrania.